Hello everybody, welcome to the video of the guide teaching how to Foundry on normal and heroic difficulty. As always, this is Draven Rennick from the US Argera server, bringing you some recommendations for Flamebender Kagraz. Today's spec will be Demonology. This guide aims to cover the talents, both offensive and defensive, the glyphs, both offensive and defensive, useful add-ons, Warlock specific tips as they relate to the mechanics, the opener, general DPS knowledge, the final 25% of the fight, and Warlock specific tips to boost your DPS. If you'd like to skip to any particular portion of the video, feel free to click on any of the annotations you see on the screen right now. With that said, let's get started. Having a look at the talents. As far as offensive talents go for this fight can really come down to personal preference, with a slight influence depending on how your group handles the dogs mechanic. Both Cataclysm with Grimoire Synergy and Demonic Servitude with Grimoire Service are viable on this fight, and they can both be quite competitive with each other. However, if your group plans to stack the dogs on top of Kagraz, much like the Mythic strategy calls for, then I would encourage you to take advantage of that and pick up Cataclysm. Alternatively, if your group plans to do the traditional strategy of kiting the dogs around, it may be more beneficial to take Demonic Servitude. As far as defensive talents go, you can effectively argue in favor of either taking the on-use defensives, being Sacrificial Pact and Unending Resolve unglyphed, or taking the collective passive 30% damage reduction. The pros to the on-use defensives is that it gives you some control in case you accidentally get hit by something you shouldn't have, such as a Lava Slash or an enchanted armament. However, I'd advocate taking the passive 30% damage reduction since there's a decent flow of damage going out in this fight. As such, you should take Soul Leech and Soul Link. Let's take a look at the glyphs for this fight. As far as defensive glyphs go, the only thing of particular note is Glyph of Unending Resolve. Combined with Soul Link, this will give you a collective passive 30% damage reduction, a strong choice for the fight with such decent amounts of damage output. Now, as far as offensive glyphs go, there's really nothing particularly beneficial to take on this fight. As such, you should take Glyph of Life Tap to keep as little stress on your healers as possible, Glyph of Hellstone since there's really no large spikes in damage on this fight, and Glyph of Unending Resolve for the extra 10% damage mitigation. As far as useful add-ons go, for this fight there's really nothing particularly notable, so I wouldn't worry about it. For Warlock specific tips regarding mechanics, this fight can be fairly movement heavy depending on your luck. As such, Demonology is very well suited to handle these periods. Use Demonic Leap or your Demonic Gateway to quickly traverse the room and escape environmental threats, kite the dogs, or position yourself for Firestorm. When Firestorm ends, use a pre-placed Demonic Circle Teleport to quickly get away from the melee group and alleviate any threat of placing Lava Slash on them. Taking a look at the opener. If you're using Cataclysm, make sure you do the following. Begin by pre-potting and pre-casting Soulfire at Flamebender, when your group's pull counter gets to 5 seconds. Follow that up by casting Corruption on Flamebender once combat begins. Now immediately swap to Acnor and apply Corruption as well. Next, immediately pop all your cooldowns, go into Metaform and cast Cataclysm underneath the pair, which will apply Doom. Follow that up with as many cast of Chaos Waves as you can. This will vary depending on if you have the tier 17 4-piece or not. If all goes well, Acnor will still be next to Flamebender and all of your Chaos Waves will get cleaved. By this time Acnor is typically almost dead, so you should be in the clear to spam free Soulfires on him until he dies, upon which you'll swap back to Flamebender, refresh Corruption, and continue with your single target rotation. Now, if you're using Demonic Servitude, you'll want to do the following. Begin by pre-potting and pre-casting Soulfire at Flamebender when your group's pull timer gets to 5 seconds. Follow that up by casting Corruption on Flamebender once combat begins. Now immediately swap to Acnor and also apply Corruption. Pop all your cooldowns, Dark Soul, etc. Go into Metaform and use Chaos Wave twice. This will leave you with enough Demonic Fury to cast Doom on Flamebender, so make sure you do that. If you have any spare Demonic Fury left over, try to burn on either Chaos Wave or Soulfire while your procs are up on Acnor. Once Acnor dies, swap back to Flamebender, refresh Corruption, and continue with your single target rotation. Looking at general DPS knowledge for this fight. Regardless of which talent setup you're playing, the biggest DPS boost you'll have is pulling your Molten Core procs for when you have Dark Soul available. If you notice that you're going to cap your Demonic Fury or your Molten Core procs, just make sure to jump into meta and dump some of your Fury on either excess Molten Core procs, if you've got more than 6 or 7, or on a Touch of Chaos. Additionally, make sure you maintain your Doom and Corruption on the boss at all times. Lastly, be sure to fully dot both of the Cinder Wolves during the dog phase, as well as cleaving them with any available Chaos Waves in Cataclysm. However, don't get tunnel visioned on one dog. As a ranged DPS, it's your job on this fight to try and stabilize the dog so they die at the same time. You should always be aware of how much health each dog has at any given time. Use the period of time when the dogs are below 25% health as a great way to generate free fury by spamming Soulfire on them. Looking at the final 25% of the fight. The final 25% of the fight becomes very straightforward. Simply spam Soulfire continuously. Make sure to use your second potion when you have a Dark Soul active. If you won't have Dark Soul for the remainder of the fight, then try to line your second potion up with your strongest DPS procs. Also, do your best to save either your Summon Doomguard or your Grimoire Doomguard for this period as well, as they both deal 20% increased damage to targets below 20% health. Finally, we have Warlock specific tips to boost your DPS. There are a number of things you could do as a Warlock on this fight to significantly improve your DPS. The most vital thing is to maximize your target hit by both Cataclysm and Chaos Wave, especially when they're buffed by Dark Soul or Trinket procs. Secondly, you can ensure that you have both Doom and Corruption active on each dog as well as the boss at all times. The increased number of Corruption debuffs offers more opportunity to cast Chaos Wave. And lastly, make sure you refresh both Corruption and Doom on the Cinder Wolves just before they die and despawn. There's a little known bug at the moment that will continue to register dot damage dealt to these adds after they die, so make good use of it. Well, that concludes this guide to normal and heroic Flamebender Kagras. Thanks for watching. If there's a particular fight in BRF that you'd like to see next, let me know by leaving a comment below. I'll see you all in the next video.